I feel from the beginning that his actions were very strange. It didn't add up.
New details revealed in the case of Anna Knezevich, the American woman who went missing overseas while living in Spain. Investigators now say her estranged husband is responsible for her disappearance, as those closest to Anna speak out.
I have to say it didn't come as a surprise that he was arrested.
We heard from Anna's best friend, Sana Ramo, who has followed the case from day one. Do you think it's possible that Anna's still out there somewhere?
I find that very unlikely. I find it unfortunately very unlikely.
Plus, we hear from retired police sergeant and private investigator Ashton Pack about the case against Anna's husband.
Well, I think there's overwhelming evidence to show that this gentleman there's, in my opinion, ample proof that something nefarious has occurred to this young woman.
We first brought you this story back in February when 40-year-old Anna Knezevich was last seen on February 2nd. Anna is originally from Colombia, but is an American citizen who is based in Florida. At the time of her disappearance, she was renting out an apartment in Madrid, Spain, while going through a divorce from her husband of 13 years, David Knezevich. It was Anna's friend, Sana Ramo, who first noticed something was off with her friend.
Well, I met Anna in the beginning of last year. We met here in Fort Lauderdale, where we both live, and it turns out that we actually live very, very close to one another. But we met last year, and we immediately on our first time meeting had a really great connection. We realized that we both share the same passion for traveling. So we spoke a lot about traveling and different places where we both had been to. I'm from Sweden, and she had traveled a lot in Europe as well, so we were talking about our travel experiences. She is very, very sweet. She's genuine. She is kind, and I recognize that. Like I said, the first time meeting, I just immediately sensed her energy as a very kind and caring and genuine person, and adventurous. So we clicked.
Ramos says she saw Anna for the last time early this year when they met up in Austria for a ski trip. After that, Anna returned to Spain and was last seen on February 2nd at her apartment in Madrid. She spoke with a friend on the phone late that night, and that was it. Ramo expected to see her friend just days later, but that never happened.
I had planned to go and visit her in Madrid on February 8th, and then this tragic event happened on February 2nd.
And I believe what kind of spurred things into action is that you received a text from her that just didn't sound like her.
Yes, I spoke to her that Friday, and then the next day, on the 3rd in the afternoon, I received those very strange messages that she had met a man on the street and she was going to go to his summer house, and none of it made sense.
Ramos shared the texts with us. They read in part, quote, "I met someone wonderful. He has a summer house about 2 hours from Madrid. We are going there now, and I will spend a few days there. Signal is spotty. I'll call you when I get back." Anna's family didn't want to speak on camera, but told Law&Crime that the texts just didn't sound like her. Anna's brother told us the message is in Spanish, but says it wasn't in Anna's dialect. He says it seemed like someone wrote up a message in one language and used Google Translate to convert it to Spanish.
And, reflecting on that so many times, after the fact, if she were to have met someone, she would have told me that on Friday, and nothing made sense. So immediately I got concerned. And when I didn't hear from her the next day, I contacted the police in Madrid. And I also found out some of her other friends in Madrid that I didn't know. They contacted me, found me via Instagram, and they had also gotten very concerned, and they had contacted the fire department that entered her apartment on that Sunday. And her other friend, Elisa, so it was me and her other friend, Elisa, in Madrid, we both got those very strange text messages.
On February 4th, a wellness check was performed at Anna's Madrid apartment, but firefighters came up empty-handed. Anna wasn't inside, and the apartment had been locked from the outside. It was around the same time that investigators announced someone was near Anna's apartment the night she went missing. wearing a helmet and spray painting security cameras. Investigators now believe that man is 36-year-old David Knezevich. And I know around this same time you reached out to Anna's estranged husband, David. What was he saying? Did you say, do you know where Anna is? How did that conversation go?
Yes. So I reached out to him that Sunday evening. And I remember trying him many, many times before I actually got a hold of him. And he said to me at the time that he was in Fort Lauderdale. And I spoke to him and we talked about what had happened to Anna. He claimed at the time that he had no idea that she was missing. I discussed with him that I was still planning on going to Madrid because I had that trip planned on the 8th. So I said, well, I'm going to go to Madrid and do what I can to find out what's going on and help in any way that I can. I think you should meet me. Are you going to meet me? I even looked up a flight from Miami airport the day before me going to Madrid and suggested for him to take that flight, which he agreed to do. So I went ahead and flew to Madrid on the 8th, and that whole day I tried to reach him. I reached him very late that day, and then he told me that he instead had gone to Serbia.
When Anna's disappearance first made headlines, David told investigators he was in his home country of Serbia when she was last seen. But that's not what he told Ramo. I had seen reports that he said at the time of Anna's disappearance he was in Serbia, but then I'm hearing from you that he was in Fort Lauderdale. So do we really know definitively where he was?
I believe that the report from the FBI has traced him, that he was the dates that he flew to Turkey. The reports say that he flew January 26 to Turkey. So according to FBI, he was not in Fort Lauderdale at the time of Anna's disappearance.
After Anna's disappearance, David retained a Florida-based attorney. We reached out to David's attorney for one of our earlier stories. He wouldn't speak on camera and only released a statement saying David had, quote, spoken to the police a number of times. I've reached out to the FBI and let them know that we are available to aid in any way. He's given police information on credit cards and attempted to hire a lawyer in Spain. When you did finally get a hold of him after Anna first went missing, was anything strange when you talked to him on the phone? Did anything signal a red flag, so to speak?
Well, his actions to me were very strange. His wife is suspected, is a victim of a crime in Madrid. She's missing. And for him, to go to Serbia and not to come to Madrid was to me very strange. That's what I can say, that it was very strange actions on his behalf. If he were to have been in Fort Lauderdale and instead going to Serbia instead of going to Madrid to find, his wife.
Months went by before there were any real updates in Anna's case. Those came in May when David Knezevich was arrested in Florida and charged with Anna's kidnapping. So what was going through your mind when news of this arrest broke?
Well, like I said, I feel from the beginning that his actions were very strange. It didn't add up. So I have to say it didn't come as a surprise that he was arrested. But reading the report from the FBI, the evidence that they present in that report was extremely traumatizing to read.
It was the FBI that made the announcement of David's arrest for, quote, his alleged involvement in the kidnapping of a U.S. citizen in Madrid, Spain on or about February 2nd, 2024. Authorities confirmed his arrest was made without incident by the Diplomatic Security Service and the FBI at Miami International Airport.
Well, there is an ample amount of circumstantial evidence here to show that something nefarious happened to Anna.
To understand the investigation into Anna's disappearance and what led up to David's arrest, we turn to Ashton Pack. From the time that Anna first went missing, that was back in February, and then several months later is when David was finally arrested. What do you think was going on the investigative side of things in order to, get a warrant for his arrest and make sure they have the right guy?
Well, what we have right now is this gentleman is in custody for kidnapping. And so it's against federal U.S. law to kidnap an American citizen, whether you're in the United States or anywhere else in the world. And so ultimately, the U.S. Attorney's Office is going to prosecute probably very aggressively that kidnapping case. I think in the days that Anna was missing, those law enforcement officers, both on the international side over in Spain, between Serbia and the US, were probably a lot of constant contact. And ultimately, the FBI has myriad resources and huge amounts of technology and manpower that they can throw to these problems. So I would not be surprised that teams of agents were probably helping international investigators. You have analysts that can analyze cell phone tower records, cell phone data, computer records, and then it's just a matter of good old-fashioned police work 101, detective work 101, going out and look at this, tracking the paint to this store. People think they're smart. This Mr. Knezevich, in my opinion, appears to have sociopathic traits. He thinks he was going to get away with this. There's no way you're going to get away with some of these crimes, especially when you leave such a breadcrumb trail of evidence for law enforcement to go and collect. So just the fact that they can trace that paint back to the same store that it was purchased and pull the video surveillance, again, not rocket science. It's just a matter of having the resources and the manpower to go out there and make it happen. So I have a feeling in those days after Anna went missing, law enforcement tends to, we tend to hope for the best but plan for the worst. And so I think immediately a homicide investigation was occurring, but ultimately we have the elements of the crime of kidnapping. And so that's why the FBI and the U.S. Attorney's Office is going to push and prosecute him at this level for now. Hopefully they can prove a homicide case down the road and take it to a judge and a jury.
What would it take for prosecutors to move forward with a homicide charge? Because as you said, we have a lot of evidence for this kidnapping charge, but we don't have Anna. We don't know where she is. And unfortunately, she may be dead. So what would it take to have that charge?
Well, there is a ample amount of circumstantial evidence here to show that something nefarious happened to Anna. People often debate whether you have to have a body to prove a homicide. In my opinion, I think there's pretty well established case law that it's always great to have a body. It's always great to have the smoking gun evidence, but they're going to continue to build the case. Obviously, the prosecutors would love to have a murder weapon. There's clear motive here. The alibi has completely been torn apart. He's been lying the whole time. Yes, prosecutors would love to have Anna's body if she is in fact deceased, which I unfortunately believe she is, and the murder weapon that was used to commit that crime. Obviously, we would love these things as law enforcement and prosecutors, but I think ultimately they will charge him with murder. If they can find one shred of DNA evidence in blood that shows that was Anna's, I think you have enough there to probably charge him and prosecute him. An ample amount of circumstantial evidence here, clearly guilty of kidnapping. And I think they're continuing to build that murder case. And of course, yes, let's try to find Anna, not only for the prosecution, but for her family to be able to lay her to rest and have some closure.
I want to thank Upside for sponsoring this news package. Upside is a free app that gets you cash back on daily essentials like gas, groceries, and dining. Once you have the app, you can claim an offer for whatever you're buying on Upside. You pay as usual using a debit or credit card and follow the steps on the app to get paid. It's that easy. To find out how much you could earn, click the link in the description to download Upside, or scan the QR code on the screen and use our promo code CRIMENEWS to get an extra 25 cents back on every gallon on your first tank of gas. When it comes to evidence against David, it's abundant. We already talked about the spray-painted security cameras outside of Anna's apartment, but there's more. At a hearing just this month, prosecutors dropped even more bombshell details about David's alleged crime. Investigators now say the man who spray-painted the cameras near Anna's apartment resembles David, and Spanish authorities even have security video of him buying duct tape and the same brand of paint used to cover up the cameras. They also say it was David who wrote up the strange text from Anna that was sent to her friends and family. Allegedly, David met a Colombian woman on a dating app and asked her to translate the message. On top of all this, the FBI says David rented a car in Serbia and returned it with almost 5,000 more miles on it and tinted windows. Spanish authorities say they saw a similar vehicle with stolen plates in the area of Anna's disappearance, but couldn't determine who the driver was because of those tinted windows. It's not looking great for him. I mean, we have photos, surveillance video of him in the store. It clearly looks like David Knezevich. Then him spray painting the security camera outside of her apartment, again, looks a lot like him. And then there's the cell phone data. It contradicts. He says he was in Serbia, but he wasn't. What do you make of all that evidence?
Overwhelming. I mean, and the guy's a liar. The guy's an absolute. He thinks he's smarter than everyone else. This is why I'm leaning towards he probably is having some sociopathic traits, if not full out sociopath. Um, I think ultimately there's ample evidence there, and his ego. This is the thing. You know, who gets away with murder? It's like, the guy who doesn't take it personal. It's the case that you just can't prove because the guy is just doing it was just business. It was a drug deal. It was a hit for a cartel member, whatever that looked like. This is personal. This is domestic. There's a marriage here. There's a divorce. There's a contentious separation of two parties here. And so I think, Mr. Knezevich has a giant, massive ego. This is why he's smiling and laughing in court several weeks ago, because all that evidence wasn't quite presented yet. And he thinks he's smarter than law enforcement. You can be very smart. You can be a very intelligent person. But when you combine the resources of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, along with all the task force officers from the local police departments and other federal law enforcement agencies, mixed with the analysts and the technology that they have, it's really, really difficult in today's modern day era to actually truly get away with these crimes.
There are reports that Anna and David were going through a difficult divorce, but Ramos says she can't give details.
I'm not going to add any new comments in regards to exactly what they were going through, the last couple of months, what was happening, what was shared between them, as far as the divorce and anything of that nature, because I don't want to jeopardize FBI, anyone's investigation in this case.
But Ramo does say she may know a motive. Do you have any idea why, if David is guilty, he would have done something like this?
Well, apparently he did not want to split, the assets between them. So that is a motive.
Right now, David is being held in Florida, but there's a possibility he could soon make bond. Now, we know that Knezevich was arrested in Miami back when he was on U.S. soil returning from Europe. Then he was denied bond initially. Then at the most recent hearing that just was a couple of days ago, a federal judge heard all of this new evidence and now says they need a detention hearing so that the original judge that denied bond can determine whether it should continue to be denied or whether they should set bond. Why do you think the federal judge that just heard this most recent information would say, hey, we got to go back and take a look at that bond?
Well, you have to understand there are, constitutional rights are paramount to federal judges. And federal judges are, the judge is the unbiased third party who's not emotionally attached to the case. He's not emotionally attached to Anna's family, the evidence. He or she is just there to make sure that the government is doing all the things that the government is supposed to do when we take away someone's freedom and put them in a jail cell. So Mr. Knezevich is going to have a chance to appear before the court again. They're going to talk about maybe putting up some kind of bond. I would not be shocked that he does end up eventually posting a bond and getting out, but there'll be some stipulations there, I believe. First and foremost, the amount of money that will be put up will be a very large amount of money, so it's very disincentivizing to him to flee. They will put him on high-level monitoring, again, utilizing technology that law enforcement has access to be able to track and monitor him. He probably would be confined to house arrest. All these things will be taken into consideration. But ultimately, the best of us and the worst of us in the United States of America have the rights that are guaranteed under the Constitution. And you have a right to have a bond hearing and not be held without, due cause pending your trial before a jury of your peers. And so that's why that federal judge, the federal judges will be very, very meticulous and very careful because they want to ensure a very fair trial where the government can present their evidence and that the defendant can post what their defense is and that all the rules are followed. Because the last thing a frontline federal judge wants is anything lost on appeal because they made a mistake in the early aspects of the case. So he probably will go. I would not be surprised if he does get out of jail, but it will be under serious stipulations with a lot of technology and electronic monitoring. And I wouldn't be surprised that he's under some form of other surveillance too.
While there's a trial date on the books, PAC says it likely won't be happening that quickly. If we're looking ahead to future court proceedings, as of right now, there's a trial date set for David Knezevich for July 23rd. That's about a month away from right now. And the judge just this past week said, okay, I acknowledge we might not get there. What do you think? Do you think it'll be delayed?
100%. These are complex cases. Again, the Constitution guarantees a fair and speedy trial. So if you demand a quick trial, that's in the spirit of not being kept in a jail cell for years on end with you have that habeas corpus rule where it's like, hey, you have to bring the body before the court. We have to be able to try this case. And so again, going back to the Constitution, the Fifth Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, fair, speedy trial. I'm sorry, I think that's the Seventh Amendment, if I'm not mistaken. But the bottom line is your constitutional rights guarantee you a fair and speedy trial. But obviously, this is a huge, complex case. Lots of evidence is still being sought. There's a lot of analysis that goes into these cases, and there's lots of reports that have to be put together for both sides. And the prosecution wants to 100% make sure that the defense team has every single shred of evidence that they have. That's the rule of discovery. You get to know everything the government has against you. There's no hidden secrets that the government gets to pull out at trial. That's your right as an American citizen. But again, they'll all acknowledge, the attorneys and the judge will say, hey, we're going to need months, if not years down the road to get this case to where it is ready for trial.
While David only faces charges of kidnapping right now, it's possible his charges are bumped up to something more severe. Is it possible that Anna is still out there, that she's alive?
I would love to have, in a couple weeks find out, she's in a room stuck somewhere, duct tape, and some bad guys grabbed her and were conspiring with this husband of hers. I would really love to think that she's alive. The evidence points that she's likely not, though. And so again, the victim here is, I just feel so bad for that family and what they're going through right now, because, again, this isn't just a random act of violence. This is somebody that she knew. This was somebody at one time who she loved very greatly, and that she decided to, marry at one point under the idea that, you're going to spend the rest of your life with this person. And so it's heartbreaking to the family to think that, the person that you thought loved your daughter has hurt her and harmed her and taken her away from you. I can't even begin to imagine what I would think if that was my daughter. So yeah, I mean, just horrible for the family. I personally do not believe Anna's still alive. I really hope she is. I mean, you never know. We can always hope for the very best. But again, law enforcement is probably actively preparing a murder trial here.
In the end, Ramos says she's very pleased with the investigation as a whole.
I'm blown away. The investigation of the FBI, of the Spanish authority, what they have presented it's absolutely amazing work. I could never imagine, because that was our fear from the very beginning, because I have said this before, unfortunately, many situations like this, there are never any answers, never any arrests, people go missing and they never find any answers. In this case, we have an arrest, and reading the reports that are out there, it's absolutely outstanding. I'm blown away of the investigation.
But there are still good and bad days. How are you dealing with all of this? I know that you had been in contact with Anna's brother. I had spoken to him as well. How are you guys holding up?
It's a daily, struggle. I try to stay strong. I try to stay strong for Anna. That's what she would have wanted, and I'm still doing everything that I can to bring justice for her. That's my ultimate goal. So even though it's hard, I'm trying to stay strong, and I have great faith in the FBI and the investigating authorities. I do believe that there's a strong chance that they will find her.
From here, Ramos is working to keep Anna's memory alive.
That Anna is, like I said before, a very genuine and sweet person, and she just see the best in everyone. And her energy was pure, and she's just a beautiful friend to have. I am lucky to have met her and to have gotten to know her, and even though she was in my life for a very short time, she's she's a very dear friend.
For now, a tentative trial date has been set for David Knezevich on July 23rd. He's pleaded not guilty to all charges. Reporting for Law&Crime, I'm Gillespie.